Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Emily Yeheskel, and I'm the former IPF Atid National Organizing Fellow and the current Communications Associate at Israel Policy Forum. IPF Atid is the Young Professionals Network of Israel Policy Forum, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to advancing support for a viable two-state solution consistent with Israel's security. We have an exciting program today. We are joined by three members of the IPF Atid community who have read and thoroughly enjoyed the book Friendly Fire by Ayalon. They will ask Ami questions about his new memoir, and then we will open it up for Q&A, at which point you will be able to use the raise hand function or the Q&A box and will be promoted to panelists to ask your question. This will be recorded and posted online for further sharing. I will now turn it over to Molly Ellenberg, a member of our IPF Atid DC Steering Committee and a research fellow at the International Center for the Study of Violent Extremism, who will be our moderator for today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So as Emily said, my name is Molly. I'm a member of the IPF Atid Steering Committee in Washington, D.C. I'm a research fellow at the International Center for the Study of Violent Extremism and a doctoral student in social psychology at the University of Maryland. So retired Admiral Ami Ayalon is a former Flotilla 13, which is Israel's Navy SEALs commando, commander of the Navy, director of the Shin Security Agency, cabinet minister, Knesset member, and a recipient of the Medal of Valor, Israel's highest military decoration. With Sari Nusaybe, he established the People's Voice Initiative, the People's Voice Peace Initiative in 2002. He's a member of Commanders for Israel's Security, chairman of the executive committee of the Haifa Research Center for Maritime and Strategy, and chairman of Akim Israel, the National Association for Children and Adults with Intellectual Disabilities. He organized and was featured in the Academy Award-nominated documentary, The Gatekeepers. His book, Friendly Fire, is out as of yesterday. And Ami, I will turn it over to you to talk about yourself and your book.
Okay, I'll try to summarize 300 pages in about 5 minutes. So the book, in a way, I tried to combine three different stories. One is my personal story, which starts with my parents. They immigrated. They came from Europe during the 30s. My father is illegal immigrant. My mother is a child to study in Jerusalem, and they met each other. They fell in love. They created a kibbutz, and this is a generation of the founders of the State of Israel of today. And as a result of my childhood, I joined the Navy. The idea was to do it for 4 years, and I found myself finishing my naval career after about 34 years as a commander of the Navy. And I'm saying it because I lost many friends. I was wounded twice. I was decorated, but this is not the main or the important part of the book. I wrote this personal bio only in order to gain some attention and to gain some credit. I have the right to say what I'm saying, which I have to admit, I believe will not be acceptable by majority of the Israelis, and I have no idea about the American Jewish communities. And the other layer of the book are the people whom I met along the way. And I chose, if I remember, 6 people. People whom I believe influenced or the way I understand myself and the way I understand the Israeli society and the Israeli reality. 3 of them are Palestinians. All of them, by the way, became very good friends, even those people whom I did not know before I met them. But today, all of them are very good friends. 2 philosophers, one a Palestinian philosopher, Professor Shin, and the other an Israeli philosopher, Professor Chaim Gans. And in a way, I tell their story because the idea, in a way, is not to tell my story, but to tell the story of the Israeli society and the state of Israel and the change that I saw during my life. And I'm doing it, this is my perspective, and I'm using their biography in order to combine it and to explain this change. And the events that I experienced, assassination of our Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, that in a way was the reason why I became the director of the Shin. The events that I faced when I was a director, and it's a major part because the way I understand the Israeli society today is most, I owe it to the 4.5 years in the Israeli Shin Bet, which influenced on the way I see Israel much more than, I don't know, 35 or 34 years in the Israeli Navy or Israeli IDF. So it is a kind of combination of 3 stories. I'm trying not to convince people who will never agree with the way I see the reality and will never accept my vision. And in a way, I do not want to offend anybody. I'm not writing it to the people who agree to my ideas even before they heard them. Because they understood it probably earlier than I did. I'm just trying to explain why I'm thinking the way I do, which is different from most Israelis. And in a way, it's not the punchline, but my experience, I'm not smarter. I did not study more than, I don't know, many clever, wise, or educated scholars in Israel. But I came to see Israel the way I see or I do because my personal history, the people whom I met, and the events that I was part of. So in a nutshell, this is more or less the book. And by the way, I hope that people who will read the book will understand it's a kind of contradiction. How complicated is the reality that we are facing in the Middle East, and why I'm so optimistic. There is hope in the end of the book. The hope is the result of the concept or the idea that we can shape our future. We are not doomed. And once we believe that we have the power to influence and to shape our future, even to shape or to change or to create partners. So this is the way I understand optimism. That's it.
Thank you so much. We have a couple of questions from our panelists up here, so I'll turn it over to Jonah now, who has 2 questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Molly. Hello, Ami. Thank you again for joining us today. Want to ask you, in your memoir, you seem to allude to the concept of the human security paradigm. What does the human security paradigm mean to you? How would you define it? And how or why do you think the human security paradigm is relevant for Israel's security?
Well, it's a good question. I have to translate your question to my language. I'm trying to do my best. I publish article and sometimes even academic article, but I'm not, the story, I'm telling a story. I'm not trying to create paradigms, but yes, behind the stories, there are concepts, visions, paradigms, etc., etc. So what I'm trying to say, and I understand that this is behind the idea of human security. People ask me, what did I learn in the Israeli Shin Bet? I was foreigner for 34 years. I was a naval officer, and I came to the Shin Bet. It was the first time when the director was not born and came from the organization. So, what I say, what I tell people who ask me, what did I learn is, in a way, I learned two very simple lessons. One is that our enemies are not artificial targets. They are human beings. Now, for you, probably it is obvious. All of us are human beings, but you have to understand, even we are not proud of it, but what we do in the military, we kill people. And when we kill people, and again, I'm not proud of it, but I killed many people. I knew nothing about them. I didn't know their names, children, family, with whom they pray. I couldn't care less. All what I had to study, to learn, is technical issues, technology, and tactics, which means the how and not whom. When you come to the when you come to the Shin Bet and you are fighting terror, you have to know everything about your enemy, each of them. You have to know his name. By the way, in the Muslims, they have 4 names, and it is very, very important to know all of them, because the second 2 names will give you something about his family, his parents, where he comes from. You have to know about his children, wife, with whom he pray in the mosque. You have to know, by the way, even the schools in which his children are studying, because there is huge difference between Hamas schools, Palestinian Authority schools, Islamic Jihad schools, or Hezbollah schools. Totally different theologies, totally different military strategies. And if you have to fight, if you really want to win someday, you have to know everything. Now, what is happening once you know, he's becoming a human being. And first, suddenly, you are not afraid of him. You have to understand, Israelis are afraid of Palestinians. But when you know him, you understand his motives. Even if I know that the moment that he will be released, he will go on killing our people. I'm not afraid of him. I understand his motive. I empathize my enemy. I do not agree to his views, but I understand why he's doing it. The second lesson, never mind, it will be shorter, is we Israelis, we shall have security when Palestinians will have hope. Now, it's not a dream. I can translate it to a military dictionary, a military language. When we say deterrence, what do we mean? It's a very simple equation. I'm threatening you that I will take something from you. But if you have nothing to lose, deterrence doesn't work. You cannot deter a person or a group of people that they believe that they have nothing to lose. By the way, this is the only way to explain the first and the second intifada. When thousands of Palestinian youngsters were ready to commit suicide in order to see the end of occupation. It is a human concept. It is not a Palestinian concept. It is not a Muslim concept. So we can achieve deterrence only if they have hope, because if they have hope, there is something that we can take from them. They are becoming much more rational. They can speak in our terms. These are the 2 lessons. And in a way, the way I understand, this is what you mean when you ask a kind of a secure, human security. Yes, because we are fighting humans, and because we are speaking to people, and because we have to understand that military tools, military techniques alone will not create a better reality. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ami, for that great, thorough answer. My next question actually relates to what you were saying before about how there's a lot of complication and maybe even contradiction within your memoir. You not only say in your memoir that in your early years, you not only supported the Jewish settlements in Judea and Samaria, otherwise known as the West Bank, but you also say that even after you endorsed the idea of a two-state solution, even until this day, that rather than calling the settlers, as they've been called before, like cancers and weeds, that they should actually be seen as heroes. You refer to them as heroes. So,
Yes.
yeah, how do you reconcile the Jewish settlers' dream of greater Israel with the two-state solution?
Well, it's in a way, it's very easy. We are living in a very, very complicated world, especially in the Middle East, by the way, and we are surrounded by contradicting ideas and conflicting dreams. We Israelis, when I say Israelis, I mean Jewish Israelis, because there are Arab Israelis as well. But we, Jews who are living in Israel, we have two different dreams which contradict each other. The first dream, whether we admit or not, is greater Israel. We believe that this land was given to us, that this is our land, that we are liberating these places, and we came back to the land of our ancestors. This is one dream. The second dream is the creation of a society, a state, which will be based on the principles which are written in our Declaration of Independence. Justice, for example. We don't mention the concept of security, but in our Declaration of Independence, it is clear that all people are equal. So this is democracy. But these two dreams today, we didn't understand it before, but today they contradict each other, because in order to see Israel as a Jewish democracy based on the principles of Declaration of Independence, we have to give up on part of our land. So in a way, it is like awakening. It's a very difficult and painful awakening process from a great dream. When my parents came to Israel, they have a great dream, greater Israel. We shall build our new state everywhere where we can build a settlement, work the land, and defend ourselves. But today we have to awake to it's awakening process, and it is painful because we have to give up, we have to prioritize. And the way I prioritize, I promise that probably when the Messiah will come, all the world will accept Judaism. Okay, so we have to understand, for the time being, when the Messiah will come, all the Jews will believe in the Bible and will follow all the rituals and the commandments and all the state. But we are living in a real world. So yes, we have to compromise. Otherwise, and we have to compromise by making sure that we prioritize. And in my case, the concept of the State of Israel. By the way, I met a rabbi, a settler, and I told him, look, how can I explain to you my vision? He said, I'll give you an answer, but I don't accept your vision. He said, okay, you don't have to, just give me an answer. And he said, well, it's very easy. The land of Israel is not ours. It belongs to God. Sometimes he give it to us, sometimes not. For 2,000 years, he did not give it to us. And we do not speak with God every day. So probably this is the will of God. And all what we have is to hope that someday when God will decide. So the idea is to translate it to different, to language, to a theology, to a language that everybody will at least understand, even if will not accept.
Thank you so much, Jonah and Ami, for great questions and answers. And now, Chelsea, you can go ahead.
Thank you. And Ami, thank you for speaking with us today. I'm struck by the persistence of your hope. And not to spoil the ending, but your story wraps up and you've got a beer in hand and you're imagining a future leader of Israel who declares that Israeli security and independence are inseparable from our decision to end our apartheid regime in the occupied territories in Gaza and to allow the Palestinians to exercise national self-determination. And what I was struck the most by is that this imagined leader making this speech is a woman. And I would love to know how you came to that vision of a woman who can sustain this kind of hope for you.
Well, it's a great question. I showed it to my wife, by the way, and she was, I don't know, very happy with the question. What did you think about it? I mean, for you, it was a kind of surprise?
It wasn't a surprise. I was actually struck throughout the book by the three women that you talk about. Sari Nuseba's mother, your wife, Biba, and then this woman who doesn't have a name yet. And the way that hope changes and looks different among each generation. Mm-hmm. And I like it. I don't know if you think only a woman has the capacity to bring about this kind of imagined future, or you were simply trying to move beyond the norms that...
Well, it's, yes. Well, it's first of all, it was a kind of intuition, and we discussed it, by the way. I have to admit, I did not write the book. The book is my story. All the ideas are my ideas, but I wrote it with a person who became a very good friend of mine. I didn't know him before, David Anthony. He's a writer. He teach, if I remember, English literature in some universities. So several universities in New England. And by the way, during the last 2 years until the coronavirus, he used to teach in New England University in Tangier in Morocco. So I met him. By the way, when we wrote the book in Tangier, in New York, in Paris, in Israel, in the West. It was, once we shall write a story on how we wrote the book. Anyhow, so he came with the idea, and it was, for me, it was natural because, I don't know, it was a natural kind of decision. And I didn't think about it, by the way. For me, it was obvious. But when you asked, so I tried to understand myself. And I have to admit, first of all, I'm surrounded by great women. First of all, my wife. I meet her almost every day during the last almost 49 years. So I came to believe, by the way, I don't know if you know that the leaders of Germany, of Finland, of Denmark, of Iceland, of Norway, of New Zealand, and Taiwan, all of them are women. And if you look on the results of the way they are fighting coronavirus, these are on the top of the list. When you measure the parameters in which we measure achievements in the way a society or a state, is fighting coronavirus. And in a way, it explained everything. Because in time, I came to believe, and I'm saying it after it was mentioned that I'm the chairman of AKIM, and we represent 35,000 children and people with intellectual disabilities, and with the families, we represent about 150,000 people in Israel. And this organization, 90% of the management are women. From the general manager, she controls a budget of 150 million shekel, annual budget, and it is an organization, 70 branches from the north to Eilat. So it's a huge organization, very complicated. In time of crisis, when people are confused, desperate, and they are looking for confidence, trust, and hope, I believe that women are much better leaders. First of all, my wife told me in a very simple way, the way she does every time. I asked her, how do you explain it? And she said, because we see people. You are speaking about ideas, about structure, about concepts, about processes. No, we see people. And in time of crisis, people, this is what they need, a kind of a healing. And I believe that in time of crisis, and Israel is in a time of crisis. So for me, it is obvious that the one who will present the vision and will lead the way should be a woman. And if we have the right to dream, so this is part of the dream.
A powerful dream. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I have my question now. I wanted to give my background when I introduced myself, because what I often see is that people who study counterterrorism from an academic background are often dismissed by policymakers who say that, you know, you're being sympathetic to terrorists, or, you know, showing this sort of understanding and empathy is really weak and it won't work. And they say, well, you don't know, you haven't been on the ground. You've been on the ground and you've come to the same conclusion. So my question is, how do you explain to policymakers that this understanding and this soft power approach isn't weakness? How do you really drive that home?
Okay, well, I understand your background, and it was obvious to me that you are studying it because you don't hear the concept of soft power too much, too often. And it was, by the way, in the academia today is very, is totally accepted, as you understand. Yes, to policymakers, sometimes it is difficult, but you have to understand that what I'm doing, first of all, I'm pretending, or I'm saying, we did not invent anything. I try to explain them not only what General McChrystal did in Afghanistan and General Petraeus did in Iraq, which in a way is exactly the concept of smart power, and soft power is a major part of it. Look, I don't know if you are probably too young, but I think it was 2002 or 2003, there was a great documentary, probably even this documentary won Oscar at that year. It was Fog of War. It is a documentary I recommend to each of you. Robert McNamara, who was the defense minister, American defense minister, during the Vietnam War. After many years, it is in 2003, if I remember, he comes to the American people, telling them, first of all, that from the very beginning of the war in Vietnam, I, Robert McNamara, I knew that we cannot win this war. So imagine, I don't know, 35,000 people, Americans died in this war, something like this. Dozens of thousands. And he was sending them to war, knowing that this war, America cannot win. And in a way, what he's telling them, if I remember, 11 lessons that he learned from this war. Now, the first lesson is empathize with your enemy. This is the first lesson. So again, for me, as I explained earlier, you cannot fight terror. You cannot win terror if you do not understand that your enemies are human beings. For us who are fighting, it is in order to understand their motives and to know how to stop them. For politicians, for decision makers, they have to understand that finally, they will have to talk to them. Because every war must end. And in the end of the war, we do not kill all our enemies. We talk to them. So, by the way, the more efficient way is to show them results. They believe in numbers. When you show them numbers, when you show them that if you create a political horizon and you cooperate with the Palestinian security organizations, and you can do it, by the way, only if Palestinians will have political horizon, you can reduce dramatically the level of terror and the figures, the numbers of people who are dying in our streets. Finally, even if they need it in order to be elected, they can say later, we won, we achieved whatever security. They doesn't care too much about how. So yes, you have to promise results. And yes, we see results. I always give the example of my years in the Israeli Shin Bet during my first 10 days, and I describe it in my book. My first 10 days in the Shin Bet, we Israelis lost 57 people in our streets, dying in our streets, and 217 wounded in our hospitals. In three or four suicide attacks, buses exploded. So, and when I left the Shin Bet, during 12 months, before I left, only one Israeli was killed as a result of terror. And it is exactly the result of what we did. We call it smart power, which is a combination of hard power, soft power. And yes, they are looking for results.
Thank you very much. We are now opening it up to Q&A. I see there are already questions coming in both the chat and the Q&A feature. So I do encourage all of you to keep sending those in. But we're going to go first to Mark and Sophie. I think Shani is going to allow you to speak. Perhaps. There we go.
I don't hear anything.
I don't
Is
hear
it only
Yeah,
me?
you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Mark, if you can hear us, could you
Right,
unmute yourself,
okay, no.
please?
He's mute.
There we go. Thank you.
Still don't hear anything.
Yeah, I see you're not on mute anymore, but we still don't hear you, Mark. If you put in the chat, I'm also happy to just read your question. No? All right, sorry about that. I will go ahead and read your question, Mark. So he says, given the polarization of Israeli society and the predominantly right-wing views of Israelis, how do you intend to promote your vision to educate particularly younger Jewish Israelis to empathize with Palestinians and understand the limits of deterrence?
Well, look, the political polarization is a problem, but there was a time, I'm not sure about today, but there was a time when I said, that not peace, but some agreement with the Palestinians or creation of reality of two states, finally, this is what we are looking for, could be achieved by the Israeli political right. If you remember Begin, Begin during the 70s, he left the government, which was led by the Labour Party, because of some ideas to come to agreement with the Egyptians, and he left the government. And when he became prime minister after Yom Kippur War, during the late 70s, he signed an agreement which was exactly on the same parameters that brought him to resign. So he changed his views. Another example, Arik Sharon. Arik Sharon was probably the creator of the settlement concept. And when he became prime minister, he changed his views. Nobody knows what would have happened, but he uprooted or brought back, depend on the language that you prefer, 8,000 settlers to Israel. By the way, he was the only one who did it. Labour Party did not move any settler. So again, it is very, very important to use the specific language. Yes, if you will speak about moral issues, and you will try to adopt the language of a philosopher, and you will try to do it for the sake of the Israeli democracy, no political leader today will listen to you. But if you will come and say, look, this is our only way to maintain our identity as a Jewish democracy. People are listening. Even in the Likud, there are people who believe. They hate Palestinians. They do not see Palestinians as human beings, probably. But they will do almost everything in order to maintain the identity of Israel as a Jewish democracy. Even if their perception of democracy is different than mine. For example, when you will ask them about democracy, they will tell you it's the vote of the majority. They tend to forget that democracy is not only the power of the majority. It is to make sure that every person and every minority will have its right, civil rights, political rights, community rights, minority rights. They tend to forget it. But still, the concept, no matter what is behind it, of Jewish democracy is acceptable, and there are circumstances in which they will lead Israel to this direction. So most of the times we are using the language of security. I'm not speaking about the Palestinians. I'm not telling Israeli leaders that I see Palestinians as human beings. But yes, I tell them that the other equation, that we shall have security only when they will have hope, this is something that I tell them every day, because all what Israelis today are looking for is security. So even leaders are ready to listen.
Next, we have Poria Ahansa, if we're able to give her the opportunity to speak. Otherwise, we'll do the same thing. And I'll read it. Give it a second.
Molly, can you get the questions
I'll go ahead.
written? So, okay.
They're written. I was just going to see if she could
okay.
ask it in person, but I'll go ahead and read it. So Poria says, during the last weeks, we have seen normalization of relationships of Israel and an Arab state, the UAE. Others are said to follow in the near future. What are your thoughts on the possibility of diplomatic relationships between Iran and Israel in a hypothetical democratic Iran in the future?
Well, in a hypothetical world, everything can happen. I supported the Iranian deal, by the way, like most Israeli security community, because I used to believe that in Iran, it is only a question of time when we shall see a different regime. I don't know if it will take 40 years or 20 years, but the level of their academic achievements, the level of their, the energy of their civil society in the streets. These are two parameters that brings me to believe that if and when they will become a democracy, it might be even be a stable democracy, a relatively stable democracy, more than probably in any other place in the region, because you have to understand it is the population of Iran are on a different level from the academic point of view, economic point of view, etc., than the rest of the countries. But you mentioned the United Arab Emirates, and it is a very, very unique example. It is a kind of a normalization that hopefully sooner or later will become a real peace. And I believe that it is a great achievement. We shouldn't try to compare it to the peace with Egypt and with Jordan because of many reasons. The role of the Emirates in the region is not close to the level of the role of Egypt or Jordan as political players or the ability to influence on the Arab street. But it is normalization and peace, which always is blessed. So it's a very, very important political achievement. But the question is, what is behind this achievement? I understand this achievement in a way that support and empower my ideas, our ideas. And we are saying for many years that if we shall make concessions on the Palestinian issue, we can create a better political reality. We can achieve normalization, peace agreement, and this is exactly the example. Because if you will ask the prince in the Emirates, he will tell you that he stopped annexation and was ready to move from normalization to peace. So this is the business. This is the deal. From normalization to peace in exchange to stop the annexation. By the way, if I understand, the American president is saying something very similar. Okay, we suspended, but it is off the table. And when he was asked, okay, what do you mean off the table? What do you think about the future? And he said, I don't know. I'm not a prophet. I don't know what will happen in the future. So it is clear that we stopped annexation. Nobody knows whether it will come later, but this is the deal with the Emirates. But I insist every time when we speak about a peace that is trying to bypass the Palestinian conflict, even if we shall sign a peace agreement with all our neighbors, organizations, states, with all the Muslim world, if we shall not come to an agreement with the Palestinians, Israel will not be safe, it will not be a democracy, and it will not maintain our Jewish identity. It will not be safe because we shall face terror, because Palestinians will not surrender. They are fighting for their freedom to see the end of occupation. So we shall face terror, and Israel will not be safe. Israel will not be a democracy because if we are not majority in our state, in the West Bank, we are building now the roots of apartheid. And we shall lose our Jewish identity because everybody who believes that one state is a solution do not understand the Middle East and probably forgot that Judaism and Islam did not cross this barrier that Christianity crossed after hundreds of years of war between the church and the state or the kings. Islam and Judaism did not cross it, and we saw it, by the way, in Syria, and it will be a total chaos. So finally, we shall have to come to an agreement with the Palestinians.
All right, so speaking of annexation and one state, we have a question here. I don't see who this black box is, so I'm gonna go ahead and read this question from Cassandra, unless you're the one on. Nope, that's not yet. All right, so Cassandra asks, do you think the two-state solution could be a step toward a far future one state? The two-state solution has been an idea for so long, but in reality, it doesn't seem practical in the long run.
Well, it's when we speak about the long run, what do we mean? 400 years, 40 years? So I want to be very honest. I have no idea. I have no idea what will happen to what today we call state. The modern statehood is a new creation. The state, the way we understand it today, I don't know, was born during, after the French Revolution. So I really don't know. I think that when we are speaking in terms of stability, two states in the Middle East, as I understand the Middle East today, is the most stable political structure. Because in a reality of states, statehood create a common language, a common rationale, meaning when a group of people believe that they are people and they have the right of self-determination, which means to create a state of their own and to live by their values, language, culture, beliefs, religion, whatever, they will fight for it. And once they created the state, they have something to lose. So once they are shifting from tribe or organization and they are becoming a state, they are becoming much more rational. And diplomacy play a major role. Smart power, soft power, hard power. We speak a similar language. Even if they speak Arabic and we speak Hebrew, the ideas are similar. Statehood is something that everybody understands. I'm saying it because I think that this is why we believe that once Palestinians will have state, yes, they will have to fight their minorities who believe that giving land to the Jews is against all their beliefs. It is a waqf land, or they call it. It is a sacred land. They don't have the right to give it. But anyhow, and we shall have to fight our minorities. 15% in Israel believes that we do not have the right to give the land of God to somebody else. And some of them will fight. A terrorist who believes in these ideas, he killed our prime minister. So we shall have to fight our minorities. They will have to fight their minorities. We shall have to cooperate, but it will be relatively safe and relatively stable. Any other concept in the reality as I know it today will be much less stable. It will be similar to Lebanon or to Syria. We shall go on killing each other. Our economy will be third country economy. our education system, our infrastructure. We shall go backward. This is the concept of one state in the Middle East today. But what will happen in 400 years? I have no idea. And probably, finally, we shall understand that all of us are human beings, and we shall find the way to live, even if we are different from each other, different people, different communities, different beliefs, without killing each other. It will be great.
Great. We have time for 2 more questions. We have one coming up, so then if anyone else wants to submit theirs into the Q&A feature, please do. So this question is from Roy Eisenberg, who says, does the development of the Eastern Mediterranean natural gas fields and proposed pipelines change the priorities of some Arab actors, primarily Egypt, in their mediation of Israeli-Palestinian affairs?
Yes, but it's a huge treasure, and it's very important. But frankly speaking, our good relations with Egypt started much earlier, and were very stable. By the way, even during the time of Morsi, the Egyptian president, who was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. So every time it is good to create more layers of cooperation and interest and kind of friendship, but in fact, it is not a major issue when it comes to our relations with Egypt.
Great. And so then jumping off, you just gave basically a complete rebuke of any one-state solution. And Jonathan Camel asks, how do you feel about American Zionists like Peter Beinart turning away from the 2-state solution?
Well, first of all, I'm every time when someone is saying totally different than me, I'm glad, because finally it will be interesting. I have to admit, first of all, I read Ahad Ha'am, and I understand his concept of Zionism different than Peter Beinart. I think that what he had in mind, but anyhow, let's leave Ahad Ha'am. I'm not trying to explain what Peter Beinart is thinking, but I do not accept his views because, again, I repeat myself, I think that he's writing and he sees the Middle East in American terms. You have to understand the concept of the American concept of one state was created in America. It does not exist anywhere else in the world. In Europe, it is not the same concept. In Europe, it's a nation state. It's not the American state, because when you say Americans, you understand the diversity of the American society. So when you say America belongs to the American people, what do you mean by American people? Other than Constitution, flag, and I don't know, some ideas. You speak many languages. There are many tribes, societies, which is great, by the way. I believe that this is part of the greatness of America. This is the way I see it. But you have to understand, when you see the waves of immigration that comes to Europe, and the fear from, not from the people, from losing the identity, the French identity, the Italian identity. This is the fear. And the violence that immigrants are facing now in Europe, we call it racism, but Europeans are fighting for their identity. And we are speaking on people who believe that they separated religion from statehood, from nationalism. But when the wave of immigration, suddenly they are Muslims, not Christians, so they do not accept it. So the Middle East is different. Again, the Middle East is different. In Syria, they have been killing each other. Between 500,000 to 600,000 people died when they fought, not only for power, between the Muslim tribes. They did not reach the idea of Jews and Muslims. In Iraq, hundreds of thousands were dying, not by the Americans. They killed each other, Shia against Sunni. So it is totally different from the American concept of statehood and democracy. And to try to impose it on us today, I don't know, it seems to me so naive. But what worries me, that he just gave up. He just gave up on the dream of a Jewish democracy. And I understand him, because we did many mistakes. But we have to understand, the whole concept of Zionism was based on a dream. When Herzl told us, if you will it, you will have it. It was a kind of a dream. Everybody was sure that he was crazy, naive. But enough people did not give up. So every time when I see a person who used to believe in two states and now come to us and tell, okay, it's too bloody late, it doesn't work. And he presents a vision that I know as a person who lives in this region, that will not work. We killed our prime minister because of ideology. So he expects us to live together with Muslims, Palestinians, and to create a democracy. It's unbelievable.
All right, thank you so much for answering all of those questions. And now I'll pass it back over to IPF Atid to Dahlia.
Thank you so much, Molly. And thank you, Ami, for this very interesting discussion. Thank you to everyone who asked questions. I'm Dahlia, IPF Atid Strategic Initiatives Associate. I'll quickly share some final announcements before we leave here today. First and foremost, the link to purchase Ami's new book is in the chat here in the Zoom. Emily's sending them along. Also, if you're not already, you can follow us on social media on Instagram as IPF Atid or join our Facebook group. All these links will be in the chat. As we mentioned, the recording of this event will be sent out shortly after for further sharing. And we also look forward to sharing the links to new reviews of the book soon to be published by Molly and Chelsea. Also, this morning, we launched our first IPF Atid community survey. So we'd love to hear from you. So please check out the link in the chat box when you have a few minutes. And this upcoming Friday, IPF Atid is proud to be attending a Shabbat event from our friends and partners at One Table. We've sent the link here in the chat to RSVP to learn more about this unique program, bringing young people together to engage in nuanced, values-driven conversations. That's all I've got. So thank you again for joining us today. Thank you again to Ami, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.